Now, the other day I made a video discussing Luke Skywalker, mainly about how sparingly Lucasfilm seems to be using him and what the reason for that could potentially be, and that it's maybe a little surprising when it seems like using him could be a recipe for success and profit for Disney, as well as potentially, for some fans, a recipe for fixing the sequel trilogy time period to maybe some extent enough so for them to tolerate it and watch films or shows involving it. Which you would think Disney and Lucasfilm would want to do, considering we now know they're moving full speed ahead into the post-sequel trilogy time period, with a movie on the horizon that will feature the return of Daisy Ridley's Rey, and see her forming a new Jedi Order that many feel is something Luke should have accomplished. And even though the video was only indirectly about Last Jedi Luke, or Jake as some call him, that didn't stop a small barrage of angry comments, emails, tweets, messages, and so on, to be sent my way by some people who adamantly believe that Luke Skywalker was exactly how he should have been in that film. That a broken down and dejected hermit who ignores his friends and seeks only death is exactly what he would have become after everything that happened to him in his life. And as I've kind of talked about before in other videos when it comes to the Jake-Luke controversy, one of the ironic parts about it is that the split reaction, how firmly some fall into one camp or the other over this, over whether they agree Luke would become like this or not, just shows how different we all are on an individual level, and sort of proves there's no way to ever prove how Luke, if he were a real person, truly would have reacted or what he would have ultimately become given the life he led. Basically, what I'm trying to say is that there's no way of ever knowing with absolute certainty how someone will react to virtually anything, really. I mean, sure, we can look at someone's patterns of behavior and try to make educated guesses about how someone will respond to anything from a simple choice of what to eat for dinner to adversity over perhaps the loss of a loved one. And though a lot of the time they may do exactly what is expected or predicted, sometimes they won't, and it'll oftentimes appear to make no sense at all. And as someone who, for whatever reason, loves to look at things and to try and figure out how and why they work the way they do, which includes people, I find the unpredictability of people to be both the most fascinating and most terrifying part of humanity. Because you don't want to feel like people do good deeds because of any reason other than they are good, kind people, while simultaneously you don't want to think people can commit atrocities or do evil things just because. You want there to be an explanation when someone does something horrible, but believe in the benevolence of mankind when they do good. And so basically I think we inherently want to believe in good, but not so much evil, even though both, abstractly, do seem to exist in humanity. And one of the reasons I enjoy Star Wars so much is because it explores the nature of both good and evil. It makes the dark side this tangible thing that can affect individuals and make them fall and do all sorts of bad things. It puts evil in a box and quantifies it and implies it's something that, yes, is a part of us, but that can be defeated or overcome, rather than being something people do simply because they can or want to do for no discernible reasons at times, or simply because they are evil. But anyway, I feel like I'm getting a bit off topic, and my point is that it's impossible to predict the behavior of human beings with absolute certainty. It's impossible to truly figure out people on the individual level. And though I'm not what I'd consider old, I have met and gotten to know many people in my lifetime already. And no two of them have been the same. I've known people who live what would be considered a very boring and or ordinary life, that they've had the same job and same surroundings for decades. They've never really traveled or shaken things up. And yet they're extremely happy and never talk about what they feel like they're missing out on in life. They've never taken a single big risk and don't regret it. But then I've also known others who have bounced around and seen and done it all, but they can never seem to find contentment in any of it. I've known people who think life is a game to be won at all cost and never ever give up and seem to kind of live for the fight. I've also seen some people radically change because of one single event and become someone almost completely different, become almost unrecognizable from the person they were before it. While I've also seen others face one tragedy after another, and yet they haven't changed a bit. They still feel like the exact same person I knew when I was a kid. And that brings us back to Luke Skywalker. And for some reason, seeing Luke fail and be defeated to see him give up, it helped some people see that anyone, even the absolute best of us, can fail and lose their way. And he's the one character they could have never imagined that happening to, just like maybe they never imagined they'd also fail and give up at some point in their life. And so that resonates with him. Luke failing and giving up, yet eventually trying again and succeeding, you could argue, has inspired them. For others, though, seeing Luke fail and give up was unimaginable because he's always been that one character they've looked to and that has symbolized unwavering determination. They may have even unknowingly been inspired by that inability to ever give up and have maybe achieved who knows what because of that attitude, potentially great things. Or maybe they have never achieved anything but still want to believe it's possible because they believe like Luke does. In other words, he means very different things to different people, and what he means to you will affect what you think his ultimate fate would have or should have been. And that's okay. Now, I personally prefer him as a reminder of unwavering perseverance rather than a symbol of the fallibility of mankind, but hey, that's me. If you feel differently, who am I to say you're wrong? Again, we have no way of proving what would have become of Luke Skywalker if he was a real person. Though, all that said, what might just be the most ironic part about all of this, that neither side of this debate seems to bring up very often at all, is Luke's sister Leia and the fact that she never gives up. That she experiences all kinds of tragedy in life, from watching her homeworld literally blown up with her adoptive parents on it, to learning Darth Vader was her real father, to losing her only child to the dark side, and breaking up with her husband and love of her life, who was eventually killed by that child who turned to the dark side, and then having it all capped off by watching the New Republic she gave her entire life to trying to create and then build, blown up with a single shot. And that's to say nothing of all the other hard choices and tragedies she faced as one of the leaders of that rebellion, all the suffering and senseless death she saw along the way. And yet where is she after all of that has happened, after the New Republic has fallen? She's leading yet another rebellion against impossible odds, as if her past failures have not affected her. And look, I'm not arguing that Leia would have given up somewhere along the way. I don't think that's her, just like I don't think that's Luke. And I mean, I know there are plenty of people that don't like the fact that Han and Leia split up. I am among them. But I oddly rarely ever hear anyone make any type of argument against the perseverance of Leia. Even the people who have quite literally wrote me what are essentially lengthy essays in the comments sections of some of my Luke videos where they defend the decision to do what was done with him in The Last Jedi, they'll have little to nothing to say about Leia when I ask them why she never gave up. And it'll usually come down to them saying something along the lines of Luke became a legend and or a myth and had more pressure on him and couldn't deal with it, and that Leia was raised differently. She was raised to deal with all the stress and pressure. And to that I'll respond by pointing out that Leia has, her whole life, been in the spotlight as the daughter of a royal family who got into politics very early. She became a senator in her teens. She then helped lead a rebellion, then tried to help rebuild the Republic before it was blown up in one shot from that First Order. How are you telling me that Luke becoming a legend was more stressful than the life Leia led, or that any amount of training in her childhood helped her keep it all together? And once more, my point isn't that I think Leia would have broken. I point this out because I can't help but find the irony in the fact that some of the same people who argue so strongly for the fall of Luke, who absolutely love his story, will, when it's brought up at least, argue almost just as strongly sometimes that Leia wouldn't have fallen.
Ironic.
But anyway, that's all I got for you this time. So now it's your turn to take to the comments below and tell me what you think about all this. Do you think Leia would have and should have had a similar break to Luke? Or do you think she was, in a sense, stronger or just better prepared for all the failures she also faced in life? Whatever the case may be, leave those comments below and let's talk some Star Wars. And until next time, thanks for watching.